saw him as James Dean. The reality was, he's not James Dean. He's a guy who's creepy.
After her shocking death, Naomi Judd's husband of over 3 decades, Larry, his husband of more than 30 years, he broke his silence, and what he shocked everyone with what they found out took place behind closed doors in their marriage. Come with us as we find out the Larry Strickland finally faced the painful truths told. How the story of Naomi and Larry began. Ruth Judd met Larry Strickland in 1979. At a Nashville music show. The Naomi was out of the country at that time. In the end, she became a music star. Was a nurse who worked late to look after her 2 daughters. Winona and Nicole Ashley had been through a tough divorce and was taking care of her, having kids by herself. Life was hard, and she often worked nights just to make she made ends meet, but she never let go of her love of music. That love is what she's going to that event in Nashville, and it's the place where she met Larry. Larry Strickland had a very different background, but music was also the most important thing in his life. A gospel singer who works with J.D. Sumner, and his career had even taken him to the Stamps Quartet. He went on tour with Elvis Presley and sang backup on some of Elvis's most famous songs. Larry was used to putting on memorable shows. Getting ready for life on the road, putting on shows for big crowds. He had been in the music business for a long time, and even though his name wasn't as well known as it turned out, that Naomi's was respected in the gospel music world. As soon as Naomi and Larry met, they hit it off. Linked, they both had a deep love for they were drawn to each other and music. Naomi was full of other people's personalities. Larry's energy, passion, determination, and drive was quiet, steady, and very loyal. They were good for each other in many ways. Their friendship grew quickly, and after going out on dates for 10 years, and they got married on May 6 and started living together. 1989 at Nashville's Christ Church by Naomi had already had a lot of success as one half of the country music duo the Judds. She started with her daughter Winona. The Judds was now one of the country music artists who did well during in the 1980s. They won several Grammys Awards, had a number of hits, and were known for how well they could harmonize. To see Naomi's strong performances, from being a nurse who worked nights to having been on the biggest stages in new country music, came out after the hits. Problems Naomi was always facing. There is pressure from management, the media, and touring's needs. The sudden rise into fame meant long days of traveling, busy lives with little time to rest behind the awards and flashy lights. Naomi was beginning to have trouble. Often too much to handle, and the pressure sometimes made her feel bad and in a relationship. At this time Naomi was also having very bad health problems. In 1990, she was told she had hepatitis C, liver disease that could kill you. The illness made her take a step, stay away from performing and quit. The Naomi and Judds, at the top of their game, had to go through tough treatments and deal with your worry and fear. When she was told her diagnosis, Larry stood by her side, but the emotional toll of she was sick and her music stopped career put a lot of stress on there. In the early years of their marriage, Larry kept touring with while Naomi tried to get used to life after leaving the stage, concentrating more on writing for TV, written books, and fought for health. And that being said, behind the scenes Naomi's health was getting worse. How fame can be hard and what it involves of combining a family with 2 girls caused stress, even though they were in love with each other. Not easy at all. Still, Naomi and Larry stayed together and held on through the ups and downs. They became close over time, and through the hard times they did their best to help each other. They could, but as Naomi's fame grew, and her inner battles got worse, the private began to show signs of wear and tear. Cracks in life that would later lead to one of the most shocking times in their whole relationship. The secrets of a broken marriage. Naomi Judd and her Winona, their daughter, was one of the loved country music duos. Like as the Judds, a lot of Grammys were given to them. The music charts with hit songs, and in all over the country at sold-out shows. Not only were they praised for voices, but because of how strong they look. Naomi became known as a mother-daughter team. Someone who had raised 2 children. Daughter worked hard by herself as a nurse and then became famous in music trade. But what most people didn't see was the hurt Naomi felt inside even during her most successful years. In her private journals that were made public, Nicole wrote a lot about after she died. She was scared that she wasn't safe. Good enough to keep Larry. She was afraid of being left alone or spite of the fact that Larry stayed with her through many hard times. She wrote that she didn't feel like she don't deserve love or happiness. These fears were not based on anything Larry did at the time, but they had roots in Naomi's childhood, being poor and seeing her my own mother has a mental illness and going through a divorce when they were young woman with 2 kids as Larry kept going on tour with gospel groups. And Naomi in the early years of their marriage was sick with hepatitis C and stayed home. Her diagnosis forced her to quit after performing. She turned her attention to making TV appearances, writing, and for social advocacy. She got involved in campaigns for health and mental health talks, but these new roles didn't make life easier for families. Added to Naomi's stress, she was always in front of the camera or with news. She felt when Larry wasn't around, she felt lonely and alone a lot of the time at home. One of the scariest signs of Naomi's emotional problems happened when Larry would never forget that moment. He was on tour for almost a month when he got home and saw that everything damage had been done to their bedroom. Naomi had ruined their wedding pictures, and threw his things outside. It was clear from what she didn't say that her mood had finally broken. Lawrence said she didn't seem to trust him. She thought he had betrayed her, but he said he had done it anyway. There was nothing wrong at that time. Was a surprise to him and a moment when he changed how he felt about her state of mind. This event wasn't just a response to being alone, it was a sign of how much Naomi hates losing she loved the people around her. Larry often came out in very bad ways. He said he wasn't always sure how to help her, but sometimes he chose to stay. Don't start another fight, stay quiet. But the quiet might have made things worse. But these hidden struggles were even worse. The public has been kept in the dark for many years. Naomi was seen by her fans as a confident and happy performer, and her daughters saw a very different side of her, a side that hurt and scared her, sometimes lost, and in the end, all that it would hurt more and more until it reached worse. The day Naomi's pain took a risky turn. Roots of pain. Naomi Judd's story didn't start with fame and music. It all began in a small town and she grew up in deepest Kentucky. Being poor shaped her childhood. Constant problems, not just money problems. She was raised in Ashland, but she was sad. Where it was hard for her family to get by. Naomi's mother, more importantly, reported having dealt with mental illness, which in a way that Naomi will never forget. Young age, living in a house where Naomi wasn't sure about her emotional stability. Learned early on how to stay alive instead of thrive. This changed how she later dealt with her own family and friends getting together. By the time Naomi was in her 20s, she already had a lot on her plate. She became a mom by herself after she married Michael Simonella for the first time. Divorced her and had 2 young children. Had 2 daughters, Winona and Ashley, and worked night shifts as a nurse to help them. Life was hard at this time, and Naomi's main goal was to stay alive. On taking care of her kids, often giving up emotional connection to keep the house running. According to both girls, the family didn't spend a lot of money, spend time together in a caring or warm way. Naomi's younger daughter Ashley Judd, in her book All That Is, she was honest, sad and happy about the lack of emotionally close in their home. She said they lived in survival mode. See how the family worked was more about taking care of basic needs than digging deep. Ashley talked about growing relationships up, feeling emotionally cut off from her mother. She was mostly raised by her while Naomi and Winona were growing up as part of their music career. Winona, and Naomi's older daughter and her bandmate, has also talked about how she feels about emotional distance even though they are on stage with her mother almost every day. At the height of Judd's fame, Winona thought they didn't really get it. She said in an interview one time, "We sang together and stayed in the same hotel and ate together, but they weren't close. Were together on stage often didn't show what was going on behind the scenes." The Judds. A lot of fame in the 1980s caused emotional cracks began to grow in Naomi's family, became the face of strength and hope for a lot of fans, but at home the attention, long tours and intense work schedules made things even worse. There are more gaps in the family tree. The picture of a loving, unified family was most of the time only for the public thoughts that were not clear, hurt thoughts and long stretches of silence. The Naomi's relationship with her daughters were hurt by the weight of, while she was becoming more famous, wished they had a better life than she, often did things the way she did them. Ashley has said that they feel alone that made her feel completely alone at in more than one way when her mother was on a trip, but emotionally also Winona, who was close to Naomi through their music. They also talked about repressed anger, especially when they disagreed in a creative or personal way, as Naomi went from being a struggling nurse to her life changed when she became a country music star. Dramatically, but those early feelings still, the wounds didn't heal. Seemed to put her under more stress to look great, which makes it harder to deal with the pain she carried from childhood and the space inside her family. She hid a lot of that pain. Making the choice to move forward instead of facing it over time, that unspoken the pain spread to every part of her life, like her marriage and her the mind, but there was one time when all that hurt that wasn't said came out, and it had a lot more to do with more important than torn pictures, love and chaos. By the end of the 1980s and beginning of the 1990s. Naomi Judd and Larry Strickland was getting more and more. It made what had started as a relationship that was passionate and hopeful is now full of ups and downs, and my feelings behind the scenes of their well-known lives. Naomi and Larry had to deal with personal problems that almost came to an end. Larry Strickland later on in their marriage, in an interview, they said that during this time, he really thought about filing for a divorce. The constant stress, a growing sense of suspicion and emotional distance. They were getting too close in their relationship. It was too heavy for him to carry. Naomi's problems with her mental health and how the two seemed to drift farther apart. But even as he thought about ending the marriage he put off, Larry said he did not want Naomi to feel alone once more. She knew how much she feared being alone. This fear had come after from the time she was a child and shaped many of how she felt as an adult. Then there were the breaking point, an event that stayed a secret for decades. One night Larry was on tour when Naomi got a phone call. The caller was a woman had never met before. The woman said Naomi that she liked Larry. She told him personal things and called he was her true love. The talk went on for a while. It was different for a short time. Naomi hung up the phone and didn't say anything to Larry right away. She didn't talk for 24 hours after that. For him at all. When Larry got home, there was a shocking scene for him. Had torn up their wedding pictures, laid his things out in front of him lawn, and had a gun in his hand. In of deep pain and betrayal in the heart, she pulled the gun out and pointed it at him. Larry later confirmed that the trigger was she did fire the gun, though he wasn't hit by a bullet, but by the emotional. Both of them were hurt that night. For all time, Larry didn't call the police. He didn't tell family, friends, or the public. Instead, he picked up his things and went outside for a while. Weeks. Naomi finally got in touch with. They said sorry and agreed to keep the incident secret for everyone, not just them in public, but also for their own sake and the health and safety of their daughters. Larry, we made a deal under the table for love for work and love for the children. This moment was for years kept secret from the public. In 1995, a TV movie called Naomi and Winona. There was a scene in Love Can Build a Bridge that was like the real event, but it was presented as a work of fiction at the time. Naomi and Larry didn't say anything about what the scene was based on that had really happened. Many people thought it was just made more dramatic for the sake of the story. It wasn't until 2025 the Judd family, a Lifetime documentary, allow it to be known that Larry, in a sit-down that proved the truth, he admitted for the first time in an interview that the shooting really took place. Didn't say anything graphic, but he said it was an act that came from Naomi's. Larry says that emotional suffering, she wasn't trying to hurt him. Overwhelmed, scared, and felt completely by herself, he talked about what she did as a cry for help, not out of anger, but Larry's choice came from a lot of pain and fear. To forgive Naomi and get back together with her marriage wasn't easy, but he thought that leaving would only make her feel more alone. Over time, they made up and kept living together, even though their love story was never quite the emotional scars from that night never fully recovered, and as shocking as at this point, it was only the start of a much bigger fight would have to deal with in the years to come. Years of suffering in silence. Beginning in Naomi Judd's mental health in the early 2000s, problems with health started to get worse and become more clear to people nearby. She knew a lot of it was secret, away from the public eye. What many saw as a strong, lively woman was behind closed doors. A person slowly fighting serious mentally ill people. Over time, show signs of Naomi's pain got worse and worse. Naomi became harder to ignore in the end. Diagnosed with a number of serious mental health problems, such as severe anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder and sleep problems, these conditions by themselves can be a pain to live with, but together they made a heavy load that affected Naomi's whole life. Her depression made her feel all the time. Anxiety made people sad and hopeless to worry too much and turn into being scared of everyday things. PTSD brought up painful memories and strong emotional responses, and her not getting enough sleep made it hard for her. She spent the night trying to rest or find peace. Time and places where people get inpatient care medications could be given to her 24 hours a day. And mental health help during these. There were days when she could only think about her recovery without having to deal with Naomi's daily life. Also included electroconvulsive therapy is a way to treat that uses electricity with limits to help people who are severely depressed when even though other treatments haven't worked. These efforts during the years 2011 to 2013 was a very hard year for Larry. As long as Strickland was close to Naomi, said this was the time when she became losing his way. And feeling alone, he noticed that Naomi's thoughts didn't seem clear. And she had trouble recognizing familiar faces or remember what's important to her. Pulled away from social interactions and even from her own family at times. Larry remembered how helpless he felt as he watched her get sicker and not be able to stop it to get to her or bring her back to the person she used to be during these last years ago. Some video footage. There were glimpses of Naomi's condition that were which is both heartbreaking and revealing. In these recordings, her eyes looked like vacant and far away, lacking the usual spark that used to make her stage stand out. Presence and personality in the body. Naomi's condition got a lot worse. They looked less strong, less active, and thinner. In terms of her emotions, she seemed distant, as if she lived in a different world from those close to her. These videos showed a woman who has a serious mental illness having a hard time keeping up appearances while having an internal battle that few fully knew about. The last days and the end months of her life, Naomi Judd seemed to more than ever by the having been in emotional pain for a long time, even though she still showed up at from time to time public events. People close to her saw signs of deep tiredness and emotional trouble. In April 2022, just a few weeks before she died, Naomi went to for no reason and alone Wien, Austria. She didn't talk about the reason for the trip with a lot of people, and Lawrence Strickland, her husband, did not go with her. The reason she was there are still not clear, if it was any of for rest, treatment, or just a break because of the stress. She felt the mystery adding to the sadness around her last days. When Naomi went back to Nashville after the trip, people who were close to she saw a change. She seemed the same, more worn out and emotionally distant. Family and friends said this about her: she looked tired, but she was getting ready for a big event, her being admitted to the Country Music Hall of Fame with her daughter Winona. She didn't seem to enjoy it. The people who were excited didn't seem to reach her. She had been dealing with mental illness for decades, and it was clear she was running out of strength. On April 30, 2022, just one day before the Hall of a tragedy happened at Naomi's fame ceremony. Died in Tennessee at home. Used a gun that was registered to her. Ashley, the daughter, found in the end. Ashley told her that she had been there to comfort Naomi during her last moments, not knowing what was going on to take place. The news of Naomi's death, fans all over the world were shocked and hurt her family a lot. The timing of her death made the loss even worse. Sad to say, Naomi passed away. Only she and Winona were going to be honored at the Country Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was meant to happen a long time ago to be a happy event. Instead, the day turned into one of grief and deep sorrow. Even with all of his grief, the Judd family chose to go ahead with it. It had nothing to do with the induction ceremony, a simple choice, but they thought it was things Naomi would have liked. The event became a strong tribute. Winona felt pain and remembered things. Went on stage and gave a moving speech. She talked about her while crying. Love for her mother is complicated. Friendship and her deep sadness. She also recognized Naomi's creativity and strength as well as the things she left behind. Winona spoke honestly and from the heart. It was not the same for Larry Strickland to mourn, but he didn't give a public. Instead of giving a speech at the ceremony, stayed quiet and paid their respects in silence by being there and keeping his cool. He afterwards said that the days after, people were shocked by Naomi's death. A lot of stress and heartache. His silence said a lot about the deep personal how people felt about Naomi's death. Death was very sad for fans and musicians who work to improve mental health. All came forward to show how sad they were and help for the Judd family after her death helped start important talks about mental health that shows even someone seen and loved as much as Naomi could suffer in silence. But even after a tragedy, what happened next? The story didn't end. That would show even more about Naomi's leave behind, her impact, and how her family and friends would keep up the controversial will after the sad death of Naomi Judd in April 2022 was one of the